Welcome, everyone. I'm Matt Bohm, founder of Backstop. Just a quick housekeeping note before we begin. This webinar will be recorded, and we'll send you the audio file after the event concludes. Also, we will hold a question and answer session after our speakers make brief remarks. So you can feel free to ask a question anytime during the presentation by typing it into the chat box. First, I'd like to say a quick word about why we brought all of you here together today. I was diagnosed with a severe allergy to peanuts when I was 10 years old. My business partner, Ryan Grasso, and I created a tech startup called Backstop for allergy families. Our goal was simple: to deliver a reliable, easy-to-use solution that puts parents like you in control of your child's health. We want to empower you to be prepared for the unexpected, respond with confidence to an emergency, and have added peace of mind knowing that if your child's network of caregivers needs help, Backstop is just a click away. Ryan and I have spent countless hours with allergy families in the last year, and we heard time and time again that preparing for school was considered a real challenge. So today, Backstop is partnering with allergy mom and American Academy of Pediatrics spokeswoman, Dr. Shelly Flais, MD, to host a virtual conversation about how families can go back to school in 2020 feeling more confident and prepared. Kids across the country are beginning the new school year, which we all know looks very different in the age of COVID-19. We want to talk about what parents of kids with food allergies can do to start the year with confidence. We'll share helpful advice whether your child is returning to in-person instruction, joining a learning pod, or starting the year remotely. Today, you'll hear from Meryl Debs. Meryl is the co-founder of the nonprofit organization Red Sneakers for Oakley, which promotes food allergy awareness and education. And Dr. Shelly Flais. Dr. Shelly Flais is a practicing pediatrician and assistant professor of clinical pediatrics with Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine and Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago. She's also the mother of children with severe food allergies. Now I'd like to introduce Meryl Debs, who many of you know as the heroic co-founder of Red Sneakers for Oakley, a leading nonprofit committed to educating and advocating for food allergy awareness. I met Meryl 4 years ago when I was thinking about how to create solutions for allergy families. Meryl lost her son Oakley to an anaphylactic reaction in 2016 when he was only 11 years old. She and her husband Robert are the very picture of resilience, creating a powerful movement of allergy families out of their family's tragedy, honoring their son's memory every day. She's become an inspiring advisor, resource, and friend. Meryl, thank you so much for being here today and for all of your wisdom and advice.
Thank you, Matt. Shortly after we lost our son Oakley, we decided to publicly share his story to help raise awareness about the dangers of food allergies. We immediately saw a need for awareness and founded the nonprofit organization Red Sneakers for Oakley in his memory. Oakley wore red sneakers in multiple sports he played, so it was only natural that we looked to Oakley's favorite shoes as a powerful symbol to represent the severity of food allergies. Today we wanted to thank all of you for joining us on this journey. Every time we engage with each other, plan, and take action to prepare for emergencies, we create a healthier, stronger childhood for kids facing severe allergies. We all face COVID-19 as well as a summon to the day-to-day bravery it takes on to severe allergies. We urge you to keep in touch with us and each other more than ever. This is the time to support each other so we can better our children. And now I'd like to pass this over to Dr. Flais.
I can just introduce Dr. Shelly Flais really quickly. She's a leading collaborator on the Backstop app design and a leader in our community who lends so much to food allergy families. Please be sure to check out our explainer videos on our website featuring Dr. Flais and her new blog, How to Build a Learning Pod, Design Your Allergy Support Team, and Feel More Confident About Back to School. Dr. Flais, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you so much for having me, and everyone, it's great to be with you today. Meryl, thank you so much for what you guys do in your mission This is a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. I've been a pediatrician for a couple decades now, and I was already a physician when I began my parenthood journey. And my oldest son was just shy of his second birthday when we discovered he had a life-threatening allergy to peanuts, tree nuts, eggs. I now have 4 kids, and one of my twins also has life-threatening food allergies. Even as a physician, to learn this information was jarring. It's been a process. I now know that my reaction and understanding in those initial first months has evolved over the past 18 decades. And when I counsel families in my office who have children with food allergies, this is something that I'm very aware of, and that things will evolve over time. Know that this is a process and you're continually learning, and to be kind to yourselves. I feel like that's a theme of 2020 and this pandemic. We're all under a lot of stress and anxiety, whether it's financial, health, what have you, but especially in the food allergy world, there's a lot of guilt that goes with it. We as parents need to be kind to ourselves and pace ourselves and know that this is a process. Next slide, please. And to that end, know that food allergy is an issue that impacts all facets of your life, not just food intake, nutrition, but social dynamics and family gatherings and holidays. And you may be surprised to find out that family members, people in your world who you would assume would be understanding, might not fully understand these concepts, and that you as a parent will be advocating for your child. And then as your child grows, that they will continue to learn. This is something that's really difficult to handle in the confines of a traditional office visit. Time is limited, whether you're talking to your primary care pediatrician or the allergy specialist. Time is of the essence, and a lot of these dynamics are hard to convey. So additional tools are going to be helpful in that regard. Next slide, please. So in this regard, the good news is we live in 2020, we have technology, we have apps, we've got the Backstop app now. So there's new things that will help us in these endeavors. And thank goodness, because food allergies now at epidemic proportions in terms of our population. So first and foremost, it's important that you have a pediatrician and an allergy specialist that you trust and that you can talk through hypothetical situations, particularly for your child's particular circumstance, safety being the primary goal here. Because that time is limited, you'll need to use other modes of communication, whether it's communicating with other food allergy families, getting involved with organizations such as Red Sneakers for Oakley to increase awareness, but utilizing technology in terms of reaching your healthcare workers. So video visits, virtual telemedicine, these are new things that in 2020 with the pandemic, we're realizing now it may not have been commonplace before, but even the more slow to evolve practices are adopting these measures because desperate times, right? So in terms of communication, this reaches families where they are and can help us a great deal. So next slide, please. So COVID-19, or as I like to call it when I see families in my office, the elephant in the room. This is affecting all aspects of our life. So in terms of logistics and what this means for food allergy families, we're not leaving the house as much. We are getting more things delivered. Life-saving epinephrine is a necessity for food allergy families. And so it's really important to make sure that your prescriptions are up to date, they're not expired. When you get a new prescription, it's really important to double check the prescription date. It's a just in case medication. You want it to last the whole year. So double check that when you get it. Storage is very important, especially because it's still warm in many parts of the country. You want to make sure to keep your epinephrine on you, whether that's you as a parent or your child as they get older. Hot cars, the temperature gets way too hot, and it will compromise the ability of epinephrine to do what it needs to do in case of a life-threatening reaction. Similarly, refrigerators are a no-no. You want to make sure you keep the epinephrine at a safe temperature so that it can do what it needs to do if a cross-contamination or an accidental ingestion occurs. Next slide, please. Make sure. And then continuing to address the pandemic and the elephant in the room, schools across the country are all doing different things. Here in the Chicago area, most of our schools have done remote learning. Some are doing hybrid. We see it in different communities across the country. There's definitely different situations. And so, and this is evolving, because even for schools that are in person or hybrid at this point might be evolving with time. So it's important for food allergy families in particular to stay in close communication with their teachers, their districts, knowing that come October and the traditional respiratory illness, influenza time of year, this may have a repeat of last March, April, where we had to break the glass and everything went full remote. In terms of when kids are in school, and one thing I worry about is with the adjustments in routines, safety thrives on routines. And so if you're in the routine of going to school, having a safe lunch plan, snacks, birthdays, that helps kids stay safe. But then when there's a change in routine, or specifically for the pandemic, I'm concerned because we're not going to restaurants as frequently, because we're not in in-person school. We're falling out of the habit of asking questions about ingredients. We're falling out of the habit of ensuring food safety. So these are things that we need as food allergy families to keep at the forefront of our minds. Next slide, please. And so we kind of touched upon some of these points in terms of making sure, I think our slides, I might have been a little bit backwards here. We kind of talked about some of these things. Let me see what the next slide looks like, because that might be my next talking points. Let's go back, because I have a few more points I wanted to make before we jump into the questions and answers. So we talked about lunch, snacks, making sure that your teachers, some teachers and school nurses will be well versed in epinephrine, others may not be. For families who are electing to remote school or homeschool, a lot of families are joining up with other families in terms of pods. And so, especially if your child is participating in a field trip or a science lesson with another family in your pandemic pod, it's very important that all these quote unquote team members are aware of what to do in case there's an accidental ingestion. Not just eating, but you might be surprised. A lot of science projects are hands-on. If they involve food, that might involve skin contact that could cause a reaction for a child. So in terms of educating everyone in your pandemic pod, the Backstop app is a version of technology that can help us. It can help food allergy parents educate other adults in your child's life to know how to identify a life-threatening process that's occurring, and then what to do if that happens. I'm just checking my notes to make sure I didn't miss any other points I wanted to make. And the beautiful thing about the app is then you can review and look back, because whether you're sitting in an office and a physician is telling you, here's what you do, here's how you inject epinephrine, you're absorbing it, but then you'll need to review. And then with the app, you'll be able to go back, watch the videos again, review, make sure you really have the information. So as a parent who's been involved with this for the past 18 years, as well as a doctor who's doing my best to educate my families in the office setting, I'm really excited about new ways to increase awareness and educate all of our families.
Thank you, Dr. Flais. Now we'll take some time for questions and answers. Please type any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll be sure to answer them. If we don't get your question today, we'll create follow-up materials to make sure your question gets answered. The first question we have is for Dr. Flais. Sort of on that topic, right, of proactively educating these caregivers, what are some other tips that parents can use to speak with caregivers after they've been added to the Backstop team, or just, once they have that baseline level of education, what are some other tips for communicating with caregivers about their kids' allergies?
A couple points come to mind right away. I think role-playing scenarios is very helpful, because it's one thing to say, okay, here's what anaphylaxis looks like. Here are the signs you should be looking for. Here's what you should do. Here's the medication. Here's how it works. Already we're talking about a lot of steps. But I feel that our human brains, like, there's understanding that, and then there's being able to react in a particular situation. So to role play, and it might sound a little bit cheesy or theatrical, but whether we're educating other adults how to take care of our younger child, or as our child grows up and we're teaching our own child how to react, to role play and act it out. And then it seems a little silly, and your kid may laugh in the process, but I think that makes it more real. And it's those preparation steps that, God forbid, you are in a situation, you know what to do. Just as a personal note, unfortunately, we've had some accidental ingestions over the years. We've had to administer epinephrine. We've had some scary scenarios. Now that my son is in college, that actually, while it wasn't fun and I didn't enjoy it at all, I am glad for those experiences, in the sense that I know that when he's independent and doing his thing, if there's a situation, he's administered it to himself. And so there's peace of mind as a parent that we've been through this, we know what we need to do, he's experienced it. So I think that role playing and getting that additional experience helps you respond in an unthinkable emergency. And then as it relates to the app, being able to circle back and review, and especially troubleshooting if there is an accidental ingestion, being able to go back and be like, okay, what were some early signs? What, kind of debriefing, so to speak, afterwards. There's also going to be the stress element afterwards that needs time and that should be addressed. But I think those are some strategies that parents can share with other caregivers, other adults who are going to be around their child.
Here's another good question. Sort of on that topic, at what age can a child auto-inject? And isn't it really tough during an anaphylactic reaction to be able to do so?
That's an excellent question, and very individual dependent. And Matt, I know you have a lot of personal experience with this, so you can probably help with this. Every child is different. And that is a very good point, that if you're in the midst of a reaction yourself, you might need to ask an adult around you, a friend. I've even heard of scenarios where a best friend gave a child their injection. One thing that helps is the time of injection has shortened over the years. Years ago, one of our injections, you had to hold in place for 10 full seconds, which I was surprised as a parent, felt like an eternity. And we did 1,000, 1,000. Double check your particular epinephrine version, but there's different time periods that it needs to stay in. I would say work with your child on the trainer device. Whenever you get a new prescription, it comes with trainer devices. You really want to start to educate your child on how to use that. Seeing how that's going can help you make that decision. But that's a really tough question. And for sure, I can share with you that my son in particular, we had an accidental ingestion in junior high. He was 6th grade. He did it himself. And it was so scary as a parent. We had already been through a situation. And at that time, I remember telling my brain to instruct him and talk him through it, because it was, maybe this is the pediatrician mom brain, but I wanted him to know how to do it for the future. And it was very scary, very mature. He's a great kid. I knew I could count on him. But there's such a range, when you put 28-year-olds in a room, 20 8th graders in a room, you're going to get a wide range. So that's really something that parents know their kids best. They should make that decision as an individual family. But that's an excellent question.
And a couple of things stand out on that topic as it relates to the Backstop app. two things. First is that you mentioned practicing with a trainer device, which again, you mentioned earlier that, you know, given what's going on and even before COVID-19, time with your pediatricians and allergists is severely limited. So even knowing how to use the trainer device correctly, not even the real auto-injector, but the training device, is critically important. So inside of the Backstop app, we have individual videos for each and every device that's available, because they do work differently. And to your point, there are different hold times when you inject it into your leg. So using, you know, a video to show that your child and yourself and other caregivers while you're practicing injecting the trainer on yourself, or, you know, an expired device on an orange, for example, it's helpful to have that reassurance as to just how to do it correctly. And the other thing that you mentioned, I think, with, you know, communicating with caregivers, the Backstop app also lets you message your team members, your network of team members. So these people around your child, you're able to, inside the app, message proactively before a babysitter comes over, or before your child goes to school or is in care of somebody new. You can proactively let them know that, hey, there's all these videos in here for you to use, but also my child is, they are capable of using it themselves. They're really confident, or maybe they're not confident enough yet to do it themselves. So just communicating proactively so that caregiver knows, you know, what to expect. It's all about just, you know, proactively managing expectations. Here's another good question. You talked about it. I think that along that point, as kids get older, how does their role in allergy management change, and how can we keep them safe while fostering independence? Because again, I think, you know, to your point, personally, I've injected myself dozens of times with different auto injectors, and it gets easier every time. So, you know, unfortunately, if you have to do it early on in your life, you see that it works, and you see how effective the drug is. So again, it just gets better every time you do it.
If I can add, Matt.
Go ahead.
Just like you said, it's almost like flipping a light switch. For as quickly as the symptoms of anaphylaxis can come on, when epinephrine kicks in, and any fear or hesitation about the needle, whether it's the child or the caregiver, to see how wonderfully it works is huge. And so that prior experience absolutely helps. So it's amazing. It's literally saved my kid's life.
Can I answer or respond about the first time doing epinephrine? So
Please.
My son, when we received our prescription and he took one look at that EpiPen, he said, "Oh, Mommy, please don't ever use that on me." And if we had just taken the time and used the trainer, we may have been able to overcome the fear of the needle. And the other reason why the training is so important is to get to know the pen, is to take away the scariness of a needle. The whole thought process of a young child having to put a needle in their leg is overwhelming. And having witnessed it myself and not done it and having a bad result, it's something that you should put into an emergency plan in your household and within the caretakers of that child. And everybody should just like practice with the trainer and get used to it. Because another problem that I witnessed when a mom EpiPenned a child a couple of years ago, and I was there with them, and the first EpiPen was administered incorrectly. So it was administered on the top of the thigh instead of the side of the leg. And that was something also that a lot of people don't understand, is the placement of the pen. And that's why I strongly would suggest training and where to put it, and the anxiety, so that you can get past that anxiety of the pen. it's kind of like creating, or it's like just like taking your baseball bat out for the first time and learning how to hit a ball. All right. There's anxiety. Everyone's scared. I'm going to miss it. Same anxiety situation. You just have to learn how to handle it. And I think that would have helped us, at least.
Right. That's what we say is continuous training. When you're under duress, you don't rise to the expectation, you fall to the level of your training. So that's why, we recommend retraining yourself, your child, and your network of caregivers monthly, as opposed to seeing an allergist once a year and, forgetting the information. If you don't use it, you lose it.
And to piggyback on Meryl's point about proper administration and location, also confirming with your physicians that it's the right dose for your child's weight. Personally, one of my son's reactions happened when he was right at the cusp between the child dose and the higher adult dose. We actually gave the first child dose. He still had symptoms. We had to give him 2 child doses to equate an adult dose. And I realized we had refilled our epinephrine months earlier. He had gained weight. So I'm very conscious of the weight cutoff now between the child dose and the adult dose, because while epinephrine in the proper dose works amazingly well when properly administered, you want to make sure it's the right dose for your child's weight. So I just wanted to add that personal note.
There was another good question that came in about so Dr. Shelly, with COVID restrictions, my allergic child is now even more isolated from other children during lunchtime. How can I help him feel less ostracized?
This is a tough question. And I'm sorry, is this child doing remote learning at home or is in the school system with a hybrid model? Can you tell from the question?
I can't tell from the question, but I would,
okay.
I might guess that from, I've heard that, and you can relate to this with, lunch being now in classrooms if they are going to in-person learning. So, what that looks like, I guess you can sort of step back and talk about, classroom lunch as opposed to being in a cafeteria.
Yeah, and in the more global sense, I would say that the classroom is probably logistically safer, but this question is excellent because it relates to another facet of the food allergy experience, which is the social dynamic. And at younger ages, kids from a developmental standpoint kind of latch on to differences. And if they have a friend who has a food allergy, I will start on a positive note that I've been so amazed. By and large, kids are very empathetic naturally. They usually, when they learn about their friend's situation, they want to help, they want to be awareness. I've heard so many wonderful stories over the years, whether it's my own family or my patients' families, going to a birthday party, the birthday child saying, well, my friend has an allergy to dairy and peanut, so we need to make sure we offer safe things for my friend. So I would like to start on that positive note that most times kids are supportive, but there are unfortunately situations where kids are bullied or feeling isolated, or even asked, like dared, like why don't, it's very dangerous. What, go ahead and eat this peanut containing item, whatever it might be. So again, I'm going to circle back to role playing with your child. And this is going to look different whether you're kindergarten, first grade. And I would argue kids, classmates that age probably aren't even that aware. But when we're talking about 4th, 5th grade and junior high, to role play different scenarios. And again, it might sound silly or theatrical, but if you as the parent play the role of the annoying kid in school who is baiting, like either trying to get a reaction or, God forbid, trying to get you to taste an item that you can't vouch for its safety, to empower your child to be able to respond in the reality of that situation. In terms of the pandemic and isolation, I'm very worried about our kids in general. I feel that we already, generationally speaking, looked at our current children and we were worried about too much screen time and not enough social interactions. And 2020 is definitely only enhancing that experience. And so where it's safe to do so, to be around supportive, loving people who understand the condition. And as a physician, I would recommend to continue physically distancing, wearing masks when possible, and then for sure, if you're under 6 feet distance, hand washing, all of the pandemic rules, so to speak, but making sure that you're engaging in activities that help your child feel socially connected. But to that end, connecting with other food allergy families can be helpful too, because I think it's very powerful for kids to know they're not alone, that there's other kids who are dealing with that. So that's a good side of technology, because we are able to, I mean, you don't want your younger child connecting on social media, but if you have friends in your community or in your school who have similar food allergy situations, it might be helpful to connect with them just to help your child feel less alone.
Do you have any general thoughts or sticking points for you, Shelly, that for children who have gone back to school already that are patients of yours, and how that's going, and what strategies that you've learned from that could be helpful?
You know, most of the Chicago suburbs are remote. It's far and few between where they're doing a hybrid model. My kids, my younger kids' high school is talking about returning to a hybrid model in the next couple of weeks, but we'll see how the COVID numbers are looking. I think my big fear as the pediatrician is that kids haven't fallen out of the routine of, for older kids, self-carrying the epinephrine, but then to make sure. School checkup season this summer was weird because I was still filling out school forms. I was still completing food allergy action plans, refilling epinephrine, but we would kind of chuckle in the office visit like, oh, haha, but it's remote learning. Do we even need these things? But then of course I completed these forms and did these tasks. But then my concern is that when schools reopen, will the food allergy action plan be on file? Will the school nurse have ready access to the epinephrine? Will the child have, you know, say a high school kid, are they going to have epi in their pocket? And then God forbid something happens. So the whole 2020 being, you know, us falling out of our normal routines, the reentry into those routines is, whenever there's a change in routine, that's when you're at risk. So that's something key for food allergy families to keep in mind.
So my daughter, who's 15, is at a boarding school. And boarding schools are letting the children have the epinephrine auto injectors in their dorm rooms, and they're also asking for them in the infirmaries. However, once the children become quarantined, which is something we just had to do or doing currently, there was a child that tested positive in my daughter's dorm. They're no longer able to go to the infirmaries for their EpiPens. So therefore, they are now having the auto injectors in their dorm rooms. And I feel that our dorm advisors or dorm parents are well schooled. When we got to our dorm situation, they asked questions. I don't know, they did it because it was me or because they've been asked to do it that way, but it was asked. And that's just a different high school situation, but.
Well, no, I think to that point, Meryl, I think, you know, an overarching theme here is to trust the buddy system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Educating your roommates, you know, other people in your dormitory, and just making sure that, you know, Shelly, to your point, what you were talking about with the anaphylaxis action plan, you know, before COVID-19, there was this sort of status quo is to bring, you know, an American Academy of Pediatrics action plan, or the one from Food Allergy Research and Education, and give that to the caregivers and your nurses and the necessary people taking care of your child. We encourage you to still do that. Mm-hmm. That's still the status quo. You should still do that. What the Backstop app lets you do is we took that information and digitized it in a actionable step-by-step format. So it's a free app that you can download, and there's an SOS feature that essentially takes the exact same, identifying symptoms, knowing when to inject whichever device you're using. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's, training videos there are acute videos for how to use the device that you have. So how to use it correctly, and then you can call 911 just directly through that application. So again, we knowing that people are going back and forth from different places and people are on the go, we wanted to make sure that critical information and training was easily available in your pocket, right? So that's sort of a summary of the SOS feature, which again is free, so you can go download that. There's proactive training videos with Dr. Flais, walking through basic information like why is this important, what is epinephrine, what is anaphylaxis, and we call it baseline training because that's critical information that, again, these caregivers around your child need to know. So I like to think of the app as sort of an icebreaker. We know that it's really difficult for, just to dump this information on new caregivers. So what Backstop lets you do is proactively invite people to your child's team before you go and drop your child off at somebody else's house or the learning pod or whatever it may be. And so they have that baseline training information. Then you can follow up with other questions and you can answer their questions related to that information. But this lets you empower people around you to make decisions the exact same way that you would make decisions in that emergency setting. So people don't have to come up with information on their own. So again, we're creating a dynamic community of patients, parents, and caregivers. And our mission is just to develop resources to make managing your child's life a little bit easier. So we encourage you to join us. We created Backstop just for parents like you. Again, I invite you to download the app for free and send us feedback. We'd love to hear, your experience with it, what worked and what didn't, and features you'd like to see added. So we welcome your feedback, and we look forward to joining this journey together. So thank you again, everybody who participated. Thank you, Shelly and Meryl, for being here. And we look forward again to continuing this journey.